Good morning, everybody. Good morning to each one of you who decided not to join the pizza party downstairs and stay with us for this Digital Licensing Summits panel. Guys, I'm sorry I'm giving you my back, but I need to be coordinating the panel. So we are here to talk about licensing of copyright publishing rights in the digital landscape, which is not a very sexy topic when we read it like that, but we will try that. This will be an interesting topic for you to see and to watch. One thing is that the majority of people that I know, artists, self-published songwriters, sometimes indie producers, they don't know about the existence of another source of revenue when they put their music online. And I won't be using legal jargon here. I will try to do practical words. But normally people only see, or the music world only see one source of revenue, which would be the digital, I'm talking about digital, okay? So the digital distribution company. So you see the revenues from CD Baby, DistroKid, TuneCore, etc. But we were discussing this yesterday, and it's important that people understand that for each music, there are, I'm putting it simple, but there are two rights, okay? Two types of rights. The master rights, or the neighboring rights, okay? Those rights belong to the artist, the recording artist, or the performing artist, and then to the phonogram producer and the record label. And those rights, the master rights, are the ones that you normally see when you are receiving revenues from the digital distribution company. But there is another set of rights, the ones that we are discussing today, the publishing rights. And those publishing rights, the rights holders connected to that is the songwriter and the music publisher. And those rights are not inked with any recording stuff. Those are the rights on the composition, on the music itself, the lyrics and the music. So we are talking about that set of rights, and we want you to understand that apart from the digital distribution ones, there is revenue coming from the other type of rights. So for that purpose, and after this brief intro, I have at my right Indre Boaretto. She's the head of Deezer global publishing team. She has worked in London at companies such as Yahoo, Nokia, BMG UK, holds an LLM in intellectual property law, and with over 13 years of experience in music and new technologies, she's particularly interested in the intersections between music publishing, innovation, and technology issues. Thank you for coming, Indre, and for joining us. I have at the right of Indre, it's Anne-Marie Chirema. She's the Director of Business and Legal Affairs of Soundcloud. Based in London, she oversees evolving global music rights and policy initiatives. An alumni of Oxford University, Anne-Marie's career has focused on IP and technology law at Mayer Brown and music licensing at the BBC and various record labels, including EMI. At SoundCloud, she is responsible for legal strategy and negotiations with labels, publishers, and collective management organizations. She has been recognized in Billboard's Top Music Lawyers for 2 years running and champions empowerment, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you for being here, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, David.
And then we have Keenan Popwell. He's an advisor at StealthWrks, an advisory firm that provides strategic development and global music licensing service to its clients. Keenan receives his JD from the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law in New York in 2005, and is specializing in intellectual property. He has spent his career in the music industry and music licensing globally, working in Nashville, New York, Paris, and now Berlin. He has been publishing director at Deezer, responsible for licensing in over 180 countries, and has also worked for Napster, Rhapsody, SZA with an S, and YouTube. And myself, my name is David Serras. I'm a lawyer, I'm an IP lawyer. I work for Unison as the international and licensing manager. I already know some of you, others not. So welcome to this. Thank you guys for joining this panel. And before throwing the ball at you, I would like just to do a little survey to the general public. How many of you, can you raise your hands, the ones who are familiar with publishing rights and what are publishing rights? Oh, so I could have saved you 7 minutes, okay? And yeah, okay, so yeah, and from 1 to 10, what? from 1 to, yeah, that you cannot do. Let's say, how many of you would rate as a 10 what do you know about publishing rights? Okay, as a 5, maybe? Okay, and as a 1, you know what they are, but thank you. Okay, so yeah, I'm starting with the questions, so I'm turning to you guys. So we all have a privileged view of what's happening in the rights licensing space. So I wanted to start with the general state of the digital platforms, market, big picture, and the figures in a post-pandemic world. So my first question goes to you, Indre, and then to you, Anne-Marie. Deezer and Soundcloud are well-established players in online music market. How did the pandemic impact you as a business? And has it created or pushed into new words like of consumption, new offers? How it went?
Yeah, so it's true that as you've all probably lived that through yourselves in your own countries, places where you are, our own work-life habits have changed substantially, working more from home, almost no or very, very little commute. And obviously, that had the impact on our users as well, and their consumption of music. So what we saw before, there was those usage peaks during weekdays or weekends at a particular time. And actually, with pandemic, we have seen them completely flatten out, disappear, interestingly. So every day has become like any other day in terms of music consumption. Obviously, during the whole time, we were extremely attentive to our users' needs. So whether it was by creating specific playlists for working from home, motivational, mood-oriented playlists, making specific offers in certain territories where we felt it was needed. But post-pandemic, so I guess we're sort of back to sort of normal, really. A new normal, but still normal. So we didn't necessarily, it was not an industry where we saw such a huge sort of limbo effect as an audio-visual, maybe, or gaming. So yeah, that's what we've seen our end.
Yeah, very interesting. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, I think just firstly I wanted to say it's such a pleasure to be here at Primavera listening to live music again, you know, and a sector that was hit so hard during the pandemic. Yeah, so as a kind of music fan, I've got my wristbands here. I was at the festival last weekend. I think a highlight was watching Little Sims, who was a first on SoundCloud artist back in 2018, part of our emerging artist program. So to watch her kind of grow from this kind of small indie artist to kind of commanding the stage with tens of thousands of people singing her songs was brilliant. Yeah, so at SoundCloud, I guess, no, Indre focused, I guess, on the listeners. I guess we were focusing on our creators as well. So I guess we have this two sides to our platform, the music streaming platform, kind of traditional listener service, and the artist services business, where creators can upload content to our platform. So at the beginning of the pandemic, yes, when people's habits changed and they were at home in their bedrooms, not going to college or to the gym and wherever, we saw a 50% surge in creators uploading tracks to our platform. 50% year on year surge. So yeah, I guess there was kind of almost a global outpouring of creativity at that time. We had like 30,000 tracks that had COVID-19 in the title or were kind of tagged as COVID-19 or coronavirus. So yeah, I think we felt I think it was really important. It felt like an important space for people to be creative at such a kind of scary time. Yeah, we were very cognizant that artists were kind of losing their income, you know, their livelihood from live and other areas. So we had some programs on our platform, including a direct support button. So you could kind of tip artists and all of the money would be passed through directly to them. That was really successful and created another source of revenue for artists. We also had multiple different we put money into different accelerator programs too. And we also launched our own, you were talking about kind of distribution services earlier. We've now got our own one, Repost by Soundcloud, that supports artists so they can monetize on and off our platform.
So it seems like the pandemic opened a lot of opportunities as well, and it pushed like the industry to give a next step into, and also diversify now, like as you do in your personal financial life or whatever. Yeah, thank you for that. Keenan, I'm not asking you about the pandemic because we all know what happened, and Anne-Marie and Indre, they gave us an interesting input. I would like to know about your work at StealthWrks, because clearing publishing rights, it's a very tricky area. When I say clearing, I mean obtaining the licenses for having the publishing rights in the music services available. So what are the main challenges that are faced by the clients that you have when licensing publishing rights? Is it fragmentation? Is it the number of territories? The request for global licensing? I would like to understand that. What are the main challenges faced by your clients in that?
Thanks a lot, David. Is the sound okay? Okay, great. Thanks a lot for having me here. My first time in Barcelona. It's a wonderful city. Very lucky to be here. So before I answer your question directly, I just wanted to give a little background about what StealthWrks does. StealthWrks is a boutique advisory firm. We have advisors in New York, LA, Berlin, Brussels, and what we do is we partner with our clients to build a music strategy and then execute on that strategy. So essentially, it's generally digital services, though we have worked with some IRL music uses, and that consists of really figuring out where to focus, what music to license, how best to license that music, and how that will connect with accelerating the growth of the company and the user growth. I actually did want to mention something about the pandemic a little bit, but in the sense that I think that it was the sort of the best of times, worst of times kind of situation. I think, as many of you know, it was quite a boon for digital businesses. People had a lot of time at home, and so wanted to stream all kinds of things. So I think that some of our clients benefited from that, but one client in particular that I'm very excited to work with, called Singa. It's a disruptive karaoke play out of Helsinki. Essentially, it's an end-to-end streaming karaoke app, fully licensed. Really, karaoke suffers from sort of a lot of unlicensed content, and that's one thing that a struggle that we have with Singa in particular is that, and this was the case with, we were talking about this last night. This was the case with UGC, user-generated content, and it's gotten better, but there's still this residual industry distaste or hesitance to work with certain types of exploitation because of some bad actors in the past. So I think we've I think that it's a struggle that we're well situated to persevere through, but just basically explaining that we're licensing music properly and want to create high quality master karaoke tracks, and the idea being that there's one app that you can use. You have it's a $9.99 a month subscription, and what's cool about it is the ambition is to be Spotify style. So essentially, that with this app you can listen to any track that you want to. So like if there's any level of demand for a track and to sing it, Singa wants to have it, and then you can sing at home, and then you can actually see which Singa venues are around, and go, and you can see where in what kind of queue there is. Go there, have your song queued up, and then the app and on your mobile phone works seamlessly with the system at the venue. And I think that the key to the strategy, coming back to the original question, the key to the strategy is the venues, and sort of like taking the industry away from this DVDAs and those crusty laminated pages that I think everyone loves with karaoke. So obviously the pandemic affects a business like that when you have, I mean, lockdowns all over the place. So that was definitely a struggle, but I think that there's a new normal, but we're coming back. So yeah.
Amazing. I think the majority of us will certainly search for Singa after this, because it seems like a super cool and different model with a lot of challenges when it comes to licensing the digital publishing rights. I was looking at the clock, and we had a lot of topics to cover, but I think I will jump to one that probably it's interesting or more interesting to the public, so we can be on schedule. And it's about like market-centric models and it's versus user-centric models. I would like to ask first, I don't know if the public knows anything about this discussion, probably some of them do, but Keenan, could you please explain like the ABC of what's the difference between a market-centric model and a user-centric model, please?
Sure. So I'll start with I think someone in the last panel, if you're here, made an analogy to the CD in the context of NFT. So I'll continue that theme and say that when I bought CDs when I was growing up, showing my age a little bit, I know. You buy the CD, and your money goes to the label and the artist. Full stop. Right? Okay. Now, in the digital streaming market, all you can eat, Spotify, Deezer, SoundCloud, et cetera. I'm really sorry to start with Spotify. I shouldn't have done that. I highly prefer their services to Spotify, by the way. Anyway, what happens is that it's this big data exchange, right? So essentially, and it applies to YouTube as well, where all of the music that is played on one of these services is tracked, and there's a report which is generated, and there's a certain standard called DDEX. That report shows, okay, this recording was played, or this song was played, and then it shows for each recording or song, it shows how many plays there was, right? Okay, I'm gonna come back to a simpler explanation. Sorry, starting a little rough here. But what you think about it essentially is that it's one big pot of money. So all the $9.99 or whatever the local equivalent is, all over the world. So let's take Fame for example. So all the plays are in one report, and then that breakdown of plays. So I don't know. I mean, usually someone like Drake has the most plays. I always say that Drake pays my salary, for better or for worse. Those plays are make this huge set of fractions, and that's applied to the whole pot of money. So effectively, what happens is that people in the younger demographic tend to listen to a lot more music, and it's just because they have more time, less family obligations, and they also tend to listen to more pop, rap, EDM, and because of that, they command a bigger share of this big fraction. And so that means effectively that instead of all my money going to the artist when I bought a CD, actually, if I fit sort of my demographic, the 35 to 44 or whatever, usage pattern, I would listen to more catalog music, older music, less, and probably less artists, so less trend-centric. So effectively, what's going to happen systematically is someone like me just would. A lot of my money is going to go to Drake. I don't like Drake. A lot of people do. I don't like him. So I think that the idea, and I'll let them talk to it because the thing about this discussion, it's something that it's very complicated, and it's like herding cats. If you like to get everyone to agree, let's shift from a model of just one big distribution where it kind of distorts the money, and you end up, your money as a fan goes to artists that you don't like, effectively to each user. That $9.99 a month is divided based on the songs I listen to. So I really believe in the model, and I'll let them pick up from here. Yeah.
It has sort of a traction, so market-centric at the moment, right? It has a traction pool of sorts. So the bigger streamers attract a bigger pool of money towards them. So what happens is that certain artists that I and you would listen to, that we would like to contribute to, they might not receive a much smaller share of money they would receive. So UCPS, the user-centric payment system that you can be hearing now about, is coming
Just
to
to
correct
clarify,
that.
this is the initiative from Deezer, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
indeed. So we've been on this sort of a passion project of sorts since 2017. So UCPS-centric model allows to address the anomaly. So whatever you pay, less of course the admin, the functioning fees, goes to the artist that you listen to. I think it's from that it speaks the best, so to speak, from that angle.
And we saw like Deezer and SoundCloud as pioneers in the changing or trying to change the market into a market-centric system with that rhetoric and with that idea of putting like the revenues in the right pocket, I would say. So you introduced us UPCS and Marie also, if you can give us a brief.
So I have an ally here from Deezer. Our system, it's our version of the user-centric system called fan-powered royalties. And essentially your subscription euros, I guess in Spain, go to the artists that you listen to, rather than being split on a pro rata or market share basis amongst the different rights holders, based on purely on the number of plays. So we think it's a more equitable system. I think it's the way lots of people think it already works.
Exactly. That was a surprise for us.
Yeah.
The people were surprised that it was not the way it was working.
Yeah. So it goes to the artists that you actually listen to. At the moment, it's something that we've rolled out for our direct creators who monetize on SoundCloud. So I think it's like over 100,000 artists are benefiting from it at the moment. And it does create changes. We think it puts more money in more artists' pockets. So the kind of longer tail of artists, not the Drakes, the kind of the mid-tier artists. I don't think he probably doesn't need any more money. But the kind of mid-tier artists that I think, certainly in the UK, there's lots of movement at the moment, like with Credits Due campaign and Ivors Academy and others, to try and redistribute or move the money around. I think for us as well, I think the big thing is it creates this incredible connection between fans, I guess, like the listeners and the artists. So artists can kind of see who their fans are now. They have that data to see who they are, and that potentially opens up new revenue streams. I guess that they were talking about on the panel previously, whether it was NFTs maybe, or merchandise and lots of other things. And for fans as well, they can directly decide where their dollars go to. So it's a really, really strong connection. And I think we're only part of both of you have said, I think it takes an industry-wide movement to kind of evolve the system or revolutionize the system. But I think we're absolutely part of something that is part of that evolution.
And sort of just to give maybe some numbers and to build on what Anne-Marie has said. So with the market-centric system today, from our platform's data, 30% of users distribute 70% of revenue. What UCPS brings, so from what we've seen, is not just mid-tier artists, it's actually niche genres that benefit the most, whatever they are at the moment. I mean, if at the time rap was niche, which is not the case, it would have benefited. But we see, so in Germany it would be Schlager, in Brazil it's gospel. So it's all those artists that in the market-centric system are sort of being not put aside, but sort of swallowed up to a certain degree by the pro rata share market model.
I also wanted to add, just kind of what I was getting at is that, our clients aren't of a size to be leaders in this space. So I mean, I speak about it more personally, and I think another selling point is that there is no distortion. I mean, there's a distortion now, but to have the money go directly from the fan to the artist is so much more pure. But the problem is that, I mean, I was at Deezer, and I was involved in trying to pitch this model, and a lot of the players and the ones that have the power, the major labels, they're I don't know if I want to say afraid, but they're risk averse about these temporary distortions. So if we change the model, what's it going to mean about, this is the way corporations think, or short-term thinking, like what's this going to look like for, second half of 2022? When really, let's go to the pure system with no distortions. But it's just, the thing is, people have a lot of priorities. There's a lot of things people are working on. It's hard to get people to focus on it and to take a little short-term risk that their market share goes down a little bit. So anyway.
Yeah, because for this to happen, to be rolled out globally, we need the consensus of all the players, essentially. And without them, we're unable to roll it out fully.
Yeah, and
I think we still think, that longer tail benefits and niche as well. But I think just this connection between the artists and fans benefits your Drakes too, and that opening up those revenue streams and that connection between the artists and fans.
it's probably making it fairer for, the catalog. Like I was telling you yesterday, for instance, I like a lot of Goran Bregovic, and I know that the monies that I pay in my streaming, they are not really credited into Goran as they should be, and like world music, African music, Portuguese music, Catalan music, they could earn a lot more, and that could potentialize new creation. And we are talking about artists now in this little chat of ours about Market-Centric, but we can also be talking about songwriters. And also, if we don't talk directly about songwriters and music publishers or the publishing rights, an artist having more input and more revenues coming from the Market-Centric model will also make, you will need, if he's not a songwriter himself or herself, you will need songwriters from so it's quite an interesting thing. But again, we always see that there is some, I won't call it evil strand, but because I want to be objective. But there are strands in the market that sometimes, like you sort of touched it, they don't want a market to move that fast until they have all the data that they need to access if their position will remain the same. That brings me to another point. I don't want to put people depressed here, only talking about things that should happen and things that don't happen. But it was very interesting that some months ago, there was an inquiry of the British Parliament, which, although it's the British Parliament and there was a Brexit, it's impacting us, and it will impact us all, I think, in the way we see and we saw what was happening in the streaming industry. And that inquiry, it's called Economics of Music Streaming. You can find it if you Google it. But amongst other findings, they found that there is a pay disparity between song and recording rights holders, and that the current revenue share from streaming gives a record label the majority of a track's revenue. This comes from a model which applied to physical sales, where labels add overheads such as manufacturing, storing, and transporting CDs. This leaves songwriters and publishers with the smallest share of revenue, despite being integral to the creative process. Music creators and music publishers argue that this model is outdated and unfair, as these overheads don't apply to digital music production. Those were the findings from the British Parliament. And I would like to ask you, Anne-Marie, how can we change this, apart from blog entries that we've made one at Unison? Eric, our head of legal and business affairs, he wrote an article, but
Great.
Besides from articles, would this need a UI intervention by a lawmaker to establish thresholds, you know, it has to be 50-50 to the master rights owners and 50 to the publishing rights owners, or should the market regulate itself?
Yeah, well, I think the DCMS committee were reading the blog post because, yeah, as you said, they very clearly said that despite songwriters contributing so much to the streaming industry, having this critical role, I mean, you can't have a song without a songwriter. Yeah, they're being paid substantially less at the moment. So I think that, you know, in terms of the revenue shares, around 55% goes to the labels and about 12 to 15% goes to the publishers. So that's a huge gap and very different to sync, which is more usually 50-50. So the recommendation in the from the committee to the UK government was that there should be parity between the song and the recording, and if needed, there should be legislation. So it was a very, very clear recommendation. Do I think we could do it without legislation? I doubt it. I can't imagine like record labels giving up some of their pie to the publishers. And yeah, I think if it was cost neutral for platforms, then maybe yes. But I think otherwise it probably would require some legislation in this space. Do I think there's an appetite for it? I don't know. You know, there's a lot of noise at the moment, and I think the British government is focused on how can we make things fairer for artists? How can we put more money into artists' pockets? Yeah, the British government famously didn't implement, say, Article 17 of the European Copyright Directive. So whether there's an appetite now, I don't know. There is a movement, though, across Europe to legislate for performers' rights or equitable remuneration, it's called in the UK inquiry. So this would give performers and creators, which I'm taking to mean songwriters as well, a direct right against platforms. So an additional right on top of the money that's already there at the moment to be paid. So I think we've seen a movement in Germany, Belgium's the latest, Austria, and some other countries. Spain already has that right. And I think Portugal used to, but now there's a movement to bring it back. So I think, yeah, the movement is for streaming services to find that money and pay via a collecting society to the performers, creators directly. I think the recommendation in the UK was that should come from the label share to the performers. So yeah, I think watch this space. There's certainly a lot of movement in this area.
Absolutely, and also, like you said, there is also a disparity, not only between I would say, the master rights part, like label and artist, and the publishing one, songwriter and publisher, but also between the record labels and the artists. I can tell you that advising or having heard from some new indie labels and publishers, they are, but mainly the labels, they are starting to the newcomers to understand and by themselves trying to fix that unbalanced stuff. But those are like indie small companies. Maybe when they grow, they will have an impact on the market. But as you said, it's very difficult for that to happen as the market as a whole. We have 5 minutes. I would like to run this topic through to all of you, but I would like to move to the next topic, which also connects with the last panel that we had about NFTs. I don't know if you are going to touch in NFTs, but for the three of you, and I would start with you, Keenan. What everyone is talking about, metaverse and the NFTs, and what the future of music streaming and publishing rights is. So, what do you think is the future of digital music consumption? And will streaming keep growing, or has it reached like a stagnation point? And yeah, I'll let you start, Keenan, and then I will move to Indre and Anne-Marie.
So, great question, a very big question. So I would say that digital streaming defined as Deezer, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, I don't think that's going anywhere because it's just so tied to our day-to-day activities, going to the gym, reading a book, all kinds of things. Music is the soundtrack to our lives. It's not going to change. I don't think that I mean, potentially in midterm, maybe track links go way down because of attention spans and just TikTok taking over a lot of the digital consumption pie. But I don't think that streaming is going. Is it going to grow like it grew the last few years? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of talk about raising the price. Usually that means that it's maturing a little bit and things are slowing down because they want to get more money out of the existing consumers and are less about growing the market share, big picture. But moving to the metaverse, so another one of StealthWrks clients is the Sandbox, which was mentioned in the last panel, and I'm just really privileged to work with them, and they're as maybe you gathered from the last panel, they're starting to kind of position themselves as a metaverse that has a lot of culture and this partnership with WoW, for example, and then very focused on music. So Warner Music Group bought a land. Snoop Dogg has his land, and then some of the speculation that the last panel was complaining about started to happen, where investment banks bought land next to Snoop Dogg. But I think the future of music I think the metaverse. I think that NFTs, while being very hyped, it is a great source of revenue for artists. I think it's a new space that, I mean, the rules are still being made, and I think, you know, in a vacuum like that, there's a lot of opportunity for independent artists. So I think that the artist will you'll start to see artists that, just like you see the TikTok native artists, you'll start to see metaverse native artists. And the one thing that kind of like big picture thing that the metaverse makes me think about is that really the data on the blockchain is public. So there's a culture of transparency around data in the blockchain, which is completely at odds with the way the music business works. For example, about 10 years ago, all the societies from Europe and the US and a bit in Asia, they came together and said, let's do a global database that says who controls what, right? Seems like the kind of information that the public should have, right? No, everyone wants to monetize it. Everyone wants to control it. So no one, so they spent $1 billion and couldn't do anything. So I think that if the metaverse gets big enough, they're going to say, you know what? We're not going to deal with music that doesn't have rights on the blockchain. If you don't want to be transparent with data, we're going to start our own system. So I think the music industry has made so much progress as far as embracing digital models, but the data is the biggest problem, and the metaverse could disrupt that. So I'm hoping that at least that they help solve that problem. You know.
Yeah, I was going to ask Indre to comment about this, but just adding something that just popped. This seems like very dangerous as well for songwriters, like putting again the focus on them and on the publishing rights, as like Keenan was saying. Metaverse, if it's too complicated because there is no sufficient metadata and things are not like properly documented, and they will start like not clearing publishing rights, they will start doing their own production music or doing just buyouts. How do you put like songwriters and the publishing industry of the future? How do you see it? I know it's a very philosophical question, and then I'll let you pass the mic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if we all, I think, agree, and we need a globalized, unified, clear database for songwriters and songs, because from that stems a lot of things, you know, whether identification, reporting, royalties payment going to the right place, efficiently, quickly, etc. So if Keenan's hypothesis turns out to be right, and it disrupts the element of itself that someone has to own the data, that we, for instance, DSPs, don't have access. We're at the mercy of all the rights holders providing us the data at the right time, right? So if that allows the disruption and allows the societies and collective management organizations, PROs, you name it, be aware of that and go into the direction of making it publicly available, public domain information, then that's great. But it's again, I think it's the same like the last panel. It's so unregulated. It's so emerging. There is a lot of behaviors that we'll see that might not be clear, justified. The space is very new. Actually, the potential of it is immense and very varied. I actually think that the music can be used in there in a way which impacts the environment rather just be an add-on. So the options are endless. Now, what rights? Who would be clearing those? For what usage? We already see those challenges with karaoke, lyrics translation. Tons of great opportunities are coming up, and yet no clear processes. We are actually really well placed. We have the relationships, we deal with CMOs every day, and yet unclear what rights we need to clear with who. And obviously the publishing industry players, things take time, and you need to move quickly in that space.
Absolutely, thank you for that, Indre. And this is not an advertising, but yeah, as you were talking, and I was thinking about like a centralized database or a different alternative for the future based on blockchain, like you said. We are working, Unison and Deezer are working with Verify Media on that project, and also with a major publisher. And also on the lyric translations, we are also working together, not the two of us, but Deezer and Unison in the Belém project for the promotion and translation of lyrics across the globe. And I think that to wrap it up, and also metadata players like guys like BMAT, that they can provide like good interaction between like licensees and licensors. But the future is symbiosis. No, it's like putting everyone at the table, sitting down, everyone understand your problems as a music platform, the problems of a UGC platform, the problems of the PROs and RMEs and CMOs representing right holders. But also, if we touch point with the market-centric approach that we were talking about, a lot of them are unaffiliated. So who's hearing them? Who's hearing those guys that, because the artist is starting to receive money directly from the platform, but the songwriter is probably unaffiliated. It's linked with an artist that was not known. You know, so, well, I would love to have more time for this panel and to hear your incredible inputs on this. I know it's a complicated matter. I don't know if anyone in the public would have any questions. We have like 10 minutes tops.
We have one question here. I just want to give good news to everyone. We have an amazing panel about metadata at 4 o'clock, but it's actually going to be 5 experts talking about which options do we have to sort out the metadata mess or to improve the situation, because without identifying who owns the song and making available this information to the DSPs or the users, CMOs, etc., then everything that we've been talking here, it's sort of pointless because we don't know where the money should go. But anyway, that was just like letting you know, 4 o'clock here, amazing panel about metadata. And now I'm going to pass the word to a question from the audience.
Okay. Can you hear me? Right. Yeah. Okay, so I think my question really is directed towards Anne-Marie and the British element of things. You said that the British government was focused on making things fairer across the board, I guess, as it were, both for publishers and for artists. But the impression that I got particularly was the fact that record companies, I think the problem in a lot of this that we're talking about, the problem is record companies and the power that they hold, and particularly the major record companies, and particular major record companies that are allied to major publishers as well. The control that they have is the control over their publishers as well. So if we look at fairer contracts, for example, which is part of the article, it's in the Copyright and the Digital Single Market Directive, this notion for fairer contracts, for reopening contracts. So some record companies perhaps might be instituting that off their own back. But in the UK, given that our attitude is that we're not going to implement the directive, we're going to so-called wait and see what happens, and also the fact that it being a Conservative government, particularly the MP that spoke to this, John Whittingdale, so it was of the view that a Conservative government to reopen contracts was something that is not conservative, is not a Conservative thing to do, and given the whole pacta sunt servanda and that type of thing. So I can't see much progress really on that front.
Yeah, I think that's it's an excellent and fair observation. Yeah, I don't know how much appetite there is to change anything at the governmental level. Yeah, I think it was John Whittingdale who oversaw the inquiry before, and now we have a new Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, who is certainly talking the talk about supporting artists and making it fairer for artists. I think it's a really good point about the dominance of the major labels. So another recommendation that came out of the streaming inquiry was that the Competition and Markets Authority should look at specifically at the dominance of the record labels, and I guess there I'm talking about the major labels and the major publishers, because they are separate but all one. So that's happening at the moment. Yeah, I think most people in the music industry, certainly even the larger companies, are involved in that and want to support the Competition and Markets Authority. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes out of that and how cooperative, I guess, the streaming services are, how cooperative the labels are. I think the DCMS started the job of trying to understand where the money flows in the industry. I think it was incredibly opaque before. So I think there's a much better understanding at the governmental level now about what's happening. Let's see what the CMA report, I think.
But Anne-Marie, I don't know if my understanding was correct. I believe that there was some sort of promise of legislation if the market didn't regulate. Promise in the air.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a promise. I mean, there's been the recommendations certainly from the DCMS. There hasn't been the appetite to legislate so far. I don't know if it's the top of the government's priorities at the moment for Boris Johnson.
I can clearly say it can't be top of their priority, because the amount of time given to the reading of Kevin Brennan's bill was a joke.
Yeah, so that didn't pass despite all of the lobbying as well. So, but yeah, let's see.
These things take time. I mean, I'm more of an expert on the U.S. side of legislative process from my time on the bureau side there. But I mean, reforming the mechanical royalty structure to allow for a blanket license. I mean, that took 10 years. At least, so but I watched some of the hearing, and I'm not an expert on the UK, but my read of it, tell me if I'm wrong, is that it's just getting started. It was kind of like a think tank kind of meeting, and then it could take years for something to.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like an information gathering process, but we did have firm recommendations. Okay. But yeah, let's see where they land. I mean, so you don't hold it up much hope.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. We have another question here at the public.
Yes, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Considering that the user-centric model will benefit these niche and like longer tail artists and genres, have you seen any pushback from major rights holders in not wanting DSPs to switch over to this model?
Well, if we had the consensus, it would be out there. Operationally, Deezer is ready, so I think there is your answer there.
I know that I know that at one time, I don't know the current status, I know that one of the big three majors was very resistant to it. But yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, I think
you've got your answer without having it really, but you got it right.
I don't need to add anything here. I don't think.
Are there any more questions from the audience? No? Oh yeah, one there. Sorry, excuse me.
Just to let you know that we were trying to avoid that question today when we were preparing the panel.
I was just wondering if you could speak to title shift to user-centric recently. with premium accounts, I believe. I was just wondering if, I was just wondering if you could speak to what Tidal's doing.
I'm afraid I can't represent Tidal, so.
I can say that I spoke to people at Tidal. And I think since the Square acquisition, I think that they're very focused on the artist fan economy. I feel like it's going to emerge, but that's where the synergy is. So I think that it's fan powered royalties fits into what they're doing. So that's like how I see it, big picture. Yeah.
Great. Any more questions from the audience? No? Well then, sir, want to make another contribution? We have 2 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, can I just ask quickly, what do you think, what effect do you think that this is in relation really to user-generated content? What effect do you think that Article 17 will have on licensing practices for the platforms?
I think you've got one of the world experts in front of you there, Sophie from Reed Smith. Just very quickly, I think, yeah, clearly there's now a requirement. Oh, I don't know. I can just say from our perspective at SoundCloud, there's clearly now a requirement for OCSSPs, like UGC platforms like ours, to get an authorization or a license from the rights holders to include their content in any UGC that's kind of uploaded to our platform. I think that was the position really that lots of the publishers already had. So I don't think it's really been quite the dramatic change for us. It might be for other platforms, yeah, coming up, but I think it's quite an established platform already. We've, we've done lots of work in that space, but I think we were already in quite a good place vis-a-vis our kind of publisher rights holders and label rights holders.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I think that UGC services, the larger ones, already had an established takedown process, but that I think it was very focused on certain rights to films and TV shows and music. I think it's other rights, like a photograph that could be in a movie, or other rights that weren't really systematized in that way. I think there's a lot of those trying to figure out how do we incorporate that into the existing processes at the UGC services.
Yeah, and now we are all expecting to hear from Sophie. Welcome to the panel. You get a shot at our panel, so please add anything that you want.
I don't know if I have anything to add. I mean, I think if the question was how much will change, as I think Anne-Marie said, it really depends of the type of platform and type of content that is hosted. And the existing or non-existing relationships that these platforms had with the music industry or the industry that they serve, if it's audiovisual or if it's... but yeah, I can also say that we haven't seen a dramatic change or shift. However, I'm not saying that we will see a dramatic change, but it's good to remember that not all countries have implemented. It's still very early days. You have had a lot of uncertainty about how do you implement. Do you implement following the German way, following the French way, following the Commission's way? So you have had political debate and controversies for a long time regarding Article 17. The controversy has normally ended a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, when the decision against the CGU against Poland was published, saying Article 17 is legal. There's nothing, no problem. Just go and implement it, please, transpose. So now we are probably going to see the member states who were a bit late. They also got their ear pulled by the Commission recently, who said to everyone, you're late. You need to transpose. So we will probably see within the next few months every member state transpose, and then it will be a good time to see really what effect it has or has not had.
Let's see what litigation brings us in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Indre. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Keenan. Thank you, all for staying here. And thank you, Primavera, also for co-organizing this with us. And at 4 o'clock, like Jordi said, we'll have a very interesting panel about metadata. It will have our partners of BMAT, our partners of Verify. It will have Deezer, our partners of Deezer. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. It will have also our VP of Ops, Irene. It's at 4 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, we have our cocktail party down.
Yeah, we'll be writing your names to know he's going to be allowed in the cocktail. So you have to be here at 4 if you want a cocktail at 5. No, just kidding. But anyway.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.